2 years, $28 million bucks for Ryan Helsley. He will not be a starting pitcher. He is going to join the Baltimore Orioles bullpen. So far, AJ, we've seen the Orioles acquire Taylor Ward, and we've seen them now pick up Ryan Helsley. They also did trade back for Andrew Kittredge and pick up his option so that they can start to rebuild their bullpen. Keep in mind that Felix Bautista is going to miss this coming season, which is a big blow for them. I'm a big Bautista fan, but Helsley can fill the void if you think that this past season, especially his time period with the Mets, was an aberration. Were you surprised about anything here?
No. This is a great deal for both. I think it's a great deal for both people involved. I think for Helsley, I mean, there was talk about him going back to St. Louis. That never happens except for Aroldis Chapman going back to the Yankees that time when he got traded. And I think Helsley got a good deal. He got it. Again, this kind of goes back to the argument we just had. He got a deal he wanted from a team he's okay going to. And you know what? Whammo, it happened. And it happened fast. And I think it's great. I think it's great for both parties involved and good for the Orioles, good for Mike Elias. It gives the fans something to be happy about around Thanksgiving. And it gives Ryan Helsley a chance to go to his mom and his dad and his wife and his kids and everyone else in his family and say, gosh, guys, I just got paid and we can have a hell of a Christmas.
And Kratz, if he goes off, he can opt out after year one of this deal and hit the free agent market again, because this was a guy heading into this season that you thought would probably get a little bit more than this. Now you're looking at this past season and some fans were like, what? 2 years, $28 million for him? But I mean, heading into 2025, he was looked at as what, maybe a top 5, no more than top 10 reliever in the sport.
Man, I mean, especially after leading the league in saves on a Cardinals team in 24 that wasn't great. He was going out there. I think he was 49 of 50 that year, but I'm not 100% sure.
49 for 53.
For 53, okay. So I thought he was coming out of the 24 season, after 24, I thought he was like a four-year type of closer, 12 to 14 million. So I'm glad he got the 14 million, a little bit more AAV than you see some closers getting of his ilk, because he's not quite in the Edwin Diaz, Robert Suarez, definitely not in the hater land, that kind of thing. But you have a guy who, to me, because he only got 2 years, the opt-out is huge. He gets to rebuild his value, and he's going to a team in the Orioles who everybody had this on their bingo card. The Orioles are going to be the most active early on here in the offseason. Like, no, nobody saw that. Have they signed the biggest contracts? No, but they're going after the guys that they really wanted. They didn't think Grayson was going to be there, so they went and got a 30-plus homer bat in Taylor Ward. They added Leody Taveras. Smaller deal, not agreeing with it based on who they have in the outfield, but they did it. So they're moving. They're moving on the pieces that they want, adding Kittredge, adding Helsley, because I think they had the most to do. Of teams that think they want to contend, even though this past year was awful, they have the most to do. They need starting pitching. They've essentially needed to rebuild their bullpen because they don't have Bautista. They don't have Yunier Cano. At least I don't think they have Cano. They don't have Sir Anthony Dominguez anymore. They really were down to the bare bones, and they can't screw it up again with this window. So I love that they're going out hard here at the beginning of the offseason.
They do have Cano. He just had a brutal year. I mean, he was really good in 2023, 2024. This past season, 58 innings, 5.12 ERA, really fell off.
It was bad. It was bad. It was bad. He wasn't good. That's okay.
They have bullpen work to do. I mean, now
you throw Kittredge, Helsley. I mean, they're doing the right things. They're making the right moves, right? Throwing Ward in the outfield. They're trying, but they still need starters. They still need starting pitching. Who's that going to be? I'm proud of them. But I'm proud of them, Scott, and I'm proud of what Kratz just said. They're going out early, and they're targeting their guys, and they're getting the deals done. Go sign the guys you want. Go trade for the guys you want, and then worry about the rest later, because there's always those bargain guys you can find.
Right now, 4th power rankings, AL East for me. A lot of offseason left to go. And Ken Rosenthal did say that executives around the game felt as if there was almost going to be a sense of desperation mode, which was music to the ears of Orioles fans, for the front office to try and do things quickly. Because you're right, Kratz, they do have a lot of work to do. The Blue Jays are adding on to what they just had, which was almost a World Series title. The Yankees have Garrett Cole coming back this season and plenty of other talent. You know they're going to do things. The Red Sox seem like they're going to do things. They've already added Sonny Gray. Those three teams look better right now on paper than Baltimore. And then there's Tampa Bay. They're not going to be that active, although maybe things change with a new ownership group. But do you guys have them any higher than 4 right now in your power rankings in the AL East?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's December 1st. And you know what you had last year? You had the Blue Jays as 5th in the AL East at this time. And you know what? They went to the World Series and should have maybe won it, depending on who you talk to.
Why do we even do the show? Why don't we just do the show for Game 7 of the World Series?
No, I'm just saying. Doesn't matter. It's December 1st.
Yeah, they have a lot. My point is,
where will Juan go? Who cares? He signed with the Mets, and they didn't make the playoffs.
That's true.
I will say I agree that they're 4th, but this is also showing that any team out there that thinks they have this like super core, that's when you start pushing in, because all of a sudden, like Adley Rutschman came up in 22. He was like, that was when this core started to like get to the big leagues. That was the first like wave of coming to the big leagues. That's when they should have started pushing in, but instead they traded their closer right when they were like, I don't know what they were. I think they ended like 81-81 that year or something like that. And they traded away Jorge Lopez. And it was like, well, why would you trade when you're close and all this stuff? As soon as your core gets there, start pushing. Because now we're fast forwarding 2026. The Blue Jays, who nobody thought were going to be there, are now pushing to be better than they were last year as the American League East champs. The Red Sox have a young core. The Yankees are always going to be there. They're always going to be a playoff team. And all of a sudden, now your core has questions. Like, push, do some, like, put your job on the line. In my opinion, if you're running an organization right now and you have that core like the Orioles had, and they still kind of have, but now they're playing catch-up. And you don't want to be playing catch-up. You need to be the big dog out in front.
I'll go right to what you tweeted about with Ryan Helsley. So what do you think of this signing as someone who can definitely speak very well to, closing and relieving in big spots for Baltimore?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think, especially if you don't want to pay an Edwin Diaz to come over, which I think they have other needs, right? So you're not going to spend all those dollars to bring in a closer, at that level. But Helsley, I think if you look back in his career, I mean, he's a top closer in the game for the better part of his career. And then he got traded over to the Mets, and anybody that's been traded, midseason, sometimes you just don't really get into a groove, or you don't settle into the new team, or what maybe he's setting up now. That's something a little different. So I think it's a good ad. It's not like it's a cheap ad, right? I mean, I think he's getting paid closer money to come over there and close, but I think he's a sneaky guy that has a nice big bounce back year.
What do you think this does for the Orioles? Is this just the beginning of their moves for the offseason? Are they actually, because we all want them to go all in, please throw all your money throw it all at people to make this team better, because they have the core. They have a core of guys. Will they make the move? Helsley's a nice signing, but will they make the move to actually make this team better?
Yeah, you would hope so, right? I mean, with the new ownership, I think that was the feeling. That's obviously a different ownership group from when I was there and when I was traded. But, kind of the vibe with the new ownership group is like, hey, this is our shot. We got a good young core. Let's add to it. We'll go out and make some big signings. And I definitely think there's still that opportunity. They need some guys in the starting rotation. They have a couple of good pieces right now. I like Rodgers. I like Bradish. I think those guys can be in any rotation, top of the rotation, and any, maybe not the Dodgers, right? But close. Basically any team in baseball, those guys are towards the top of a rotation. So they're sitting pretty there. This bullpen piece, they need to add a few there too. But I think a top of the rotation starter is what they need. And like you said, that young core is going to get expensive here quick, especially if they, perform at a high level. And so the question is, how short is that window? If you're willing to lock some guys up, then I think the window expands, right? But, they haven't really shown that yet. But it takes two to get those long-term deals done. And those guys are especially like a gunner. He's represented by Boris, which typically doesn't get deals done before free agency.
All right, I want to get to the rest of the Orioles team, but first I have to get in my Helsley question because you kind of did it a little bit, obviously not on the same scale that Helsley did it in the sense where your free agent year, your platform year didn't go as well as elite level as you were before that. Is there a thing to that? Is there a thing? Because when you're talking about the Orioles fans looking at it like, oh, great, did we get a guy who's on the downslope now of his career? Because you then went to the Yankees in your free agent contract and absolutely balled out with like 1 ERAs back to like almost your peak. Nobody's better than your peak when you had like a 0.5 or whatever. But like, is there something to that free agent year that can get in a closer's head?
Yeah, I think so. I guess for the question for me, I was coming off of a ruptured Achilles, like really bad timing. I mean, let's pick a terrible injury and then just put it right in my free agent year. And then so I only came back about a month before I got traded to New York. And yeah, I was not anywhere near the level I had been prior. And so, yeah, in my head, I'm traded. I'm like still trying to figure out this Achilles thing. Is this a thing that, teams long-term are going to think is going to be an issue? My performance isn't at the same level. I finished strong to that year in September, had an okay playoffs, nothing great. But yeah, absolutely. There's some doubt. I think with mine, it was a known injury. And then I came back and the performance got better as the season went. With Helsley, I think it's the opposite, right? He didn't finish on a high note. There was no injury that, anybody knows about. So if he's healthy, I just think going into a different role, not closing, having to kind of alter your routine, going to New York, anybody that's played in New York knows if you don't get going, if you don't start out of the gate hot, I mean, those fans are going to let you know about it. The media's going to let you know about it. And it's hard. We've played with guys that are elite, go into New York, struggle, have a hard time bouncing back, and then they leave and they're right back to being elite. So for me, I want to bet on the track record and assume if he's healthy that just his time in New York was just, a small blimp on the radar.
I have a unique holiday gift idea. It is called Superpower because Kratz, they care about you. It's a very unique health platform. It's new and it finally gets you the answers that you need about what's really happening inside your body and what to do about it.
I got the answers. I'm on the journey of what to do about it. Why would I not want to give it to one of my loved ones in my life?
Give your loved ones something that actually lasts. That's right, Kratz. Better health and more time with you. If you go to superpower.com/gift, you get a free $49 premium gift box with your gifted membership. After you sign up, they'll ask you how you heard about them. Please mention FT to support the show. One simple lab test measures 100 plus biomarkers. We're talking hormones, vitamins, minerals, and so much more. You'll get a full health report and a personalized action plan built by clinicians, including nutrition, supplement, and lifestyle guidance. Get after it, FT fam.
Helsley came out and said, "Oh, I was tipping and I was too predictable." Dude, he's got 2 pitches. Like, how predictable can you be? You threw 1 pitch. Every time I face you, I'm like, this dude's going to throw me a sinker and I can't hit it. So I'm just literally hoping I don't hit into a double play if there's a guy on base, right?
Yeah.
But
I feel like that's like regurgitated, right? Is that like regurgitated from?
That's kind of what my question for you was going to be because I got hit, I was tipping, or they found like my glove was here instead of here, right? Like, and then, you only have 2 pitches, so I'm predictable. Is that really a thing for a reliever? Because most relievers really only have 2 pitches anyways.
Yeah, I think it depends on the guy. I mean, you talk to some hitters, I remember going over to New York and they were, hey, when you throw your slider, I used to do this 3 pump thing when I would throw my sinker. Like, that's just me coming set. And every now and then I do a 3.5 pump. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I looked at my numbers that they had against my slider. They were god awful. So I was like, well, that didn't really work. And then everyone knows that I'm throwing a fastball, so that doesn't matter. So I think a lot of times the tipping is something, that you'll hear from some of the analysts that come down the clubhouse. and they'll be like, hey, like, we think you're tipping, right? Because they shouldn't be hitting you like this, because all your other underlying numbers are still pretty much you, but you're getting hit for some reason. So at least in my experience, I feel like a lot of the times, not all the time, tipping is kind of just like a regurgitated thing guys hear from somebody, on the analytic team, and they come down to try to, because they can't figure out, why. So it's kind of like, hey, like, you're really good, you're just tipping. So if you don't tip, then you're going to go right back to being really good. But I don't know the ins and outs of his tip, right? I could watch video and maybe figure it out. But there's guys like Garrett Cole, right? He'll do some stuff tipping. And, when he addressed it, the numbers got better. I don't know if it's a mental thing or what, but, works for some guys. I don't really believe in it just because I threw one pitch. And if that's not tipping, I don't know what is.
Do you think there was ever any real? I mean, obviously we hear about the Tigers. We're looking at Helsley as a starter. Do you think there's anything real with that based on what he's done in his career and his repertoire, or was it just you know what, that'll probably increase your value a little bit in the free agent market?
Yeah, a part of me thinks that might be, his agent, putting something out there maybe. Hey, this guy, he's capable. He's willing to be a starter. Maybe one team brought it up, and then it kind of snowballs. But when you look at some of the guys, Clay Holmes is like a perfect example for me. I mean, anybody that played with Clay Holmes and watched him spin the baseball in the bullpen knew that he's got, multiple elite pitches or, extremely good pitches. And it wasn't far-fetched to see him go to the Mets and be a good starter. If you watched him on a day-to-day basis and kind of knowing his mentality too. But I think just because it works for one guy doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. I think a guy like Helsley is, when you see him throw, elite fastball, elite slider, this guy's closing games. I'm not so sure his value would have been increased at all by being a starter. I don't see that with him.
So what do you think it is? Do you think it's that easy? Do you think teams just look at Clay Holmes and say, oh, we can make a cool closer with a sinker like you were a starter? Like, why do you think like, oh, Helsley has 2 pitches, he throws 100, we can make him a starter? Do you think it's easier said than done to do that? Because I think most bullpen guys like yourself were failed starters, right? And then they became closers because they had 1 or 2 pitches that were unbelievably good. Do you think it's that easy just to be like, oh, you know what, I'm going to become a starter again because, oh, it's so easy?
No, it's absolutely a lot harder to sustain success as a starter. I think it was like myself, Andrew Miller, Wade Davis were kind of around the same time where we transitioned to the bullpen. And if you look at, I think Wade and Andrew had a lot more success as a starter than I did. But typically you try the guy out as a starter, you move him to the pen. Not really vice versa. But I think it just shows that teams are really struggling to find starting pitching. And so if you have a guy like Clay Holmes that you watch every single day, this is probably something internally the Yankees discussed, I would think, that this guy's capable of being a starter. I can't remember if I ever heard it there, but no one was surprised when he went to the Mets and they made him a starter. And Carlos Mendoza was in New York. So, that could have been something that he brought up to them too. Hey, go get this guy and let's see if, we can make him into a starter because he's got the pitch arsenal to do it.
This is no shade to Taylor Ward, but are you surprised that the Orioles gave up essentially on Grayson Rodriguez?
I think the one thing with Ward is, right, he's been healthy. You know what you're going to get at him for the most part. Hopefully he's a little bit of a veteran presence in that clubhouse with a bunch of young guys. I think he reinforces that lineup a little bit. With Grayson, it's, the guy could be a multi-time all-star. He could be, one of the best starters in the game if he can stay healthy. And I think that's the big if, right? When guys get hurt a lot early in their career, I think it puts some doubt in your head. Hey, can we rely on this guy? Or if we're willing to spend the money, do we just go out and get a starter? Maybe they're willing to go out and spend the money and get a starter, right? And that's why they're willing up to get rid of Grayson. So I think at the end of the offseason, we'll have a good idea. Hey, maybe this was because they were going to replace him with, a free agent starter, a high level starter. But if they don't, then yeah, maybe you're scratching your head a little bit. But I think the injury history is tough. It's like, man, we really like this guy. He's got great stuff. We like the person, but can we trust that he's going to stay healthy for the entire season when he hasn't really been able to yet?
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Zach, did you see the whole ALCS thing with the Dan Wilson? And you went through this. Dan Wilson and Munoz not coming in and then giving up the home run. You kind of went through that with the Orioles. I hate to bring it up again. I'm sorry. Against the same team with the Blue Jays where you didn't pitch and Buck kind of got crushed for not pitching you. Do you understand that? Do you understand? I mean, it's a different game now. Obviously, analytics have changed that. But do you kind of feel for Munoz the fact that he wasn't in that game and they gave up the lead without him pitching in the game they had to win?
Yeah, it's tough to watch. My situation, I really, not pitching in that wild card game. I think a lot of managers took notice. Actually, I went to the World Series that year to get the Reliever of the Year award, and I talked to Francona for like a hot second. He was like, "Why didn't you pitch?" Right? And it was one of those things. And Andrew Miller was right there. And after Francona left, I'm like, "Man, you're going to throw in every single one of these games, aren't you?" Like after that, and I think there's
and he did, and he did, by the way,
and he did. There's some truth to it. There was some truth to it, and so I think now it's when you see it, you're kind of like, hold on, didn't we learn our lesson a little bit? Like you want to have your guy out there. I understand that. Okay, well, if you pitch your best guy, right, and let's say the game's tied or whatever, and he's going 2 or 3 innings, then what, right? Then, but I think you can live with the decision to throw your best guy and then lose it, or have somebody else have to come in and then lose it that way because you used your best arm in your pen. So it is tough to watch that go down. Everyone's circumstances are different. In my situation, I'm not really sure. Ubaldo was throwing well up until that point, but he wasn't a reliever. I was hot. I was ready to go, multiple innings. And I just think it was one of those things you learn from. So, but when you see it now, you're like, man, we can't lose that way. Obviously not understanding, their bullpen dynamic or anything like that. But yeah, you got to throw your best guys out there in games like that.